So in general, masculine leadership, it's about a single-minded connection to consciousness. And then from consciousness, deciding what is the next thing to do. Okay. So from consciousness, deciding what the next thing, right, the next right action is, or the next path. Now, this could be the next move of your body in making love. This could be the next year out for your business, right? But it's tethered, like, like David has taught, and I've also, kind of followed his lead on this, which is having yourself tethered, 50% of your awareness tethered to the infinite, to consciousness, and then 50% of your awareness tethered to the field that you're in, whether that's whether that's your family or a romantic situation or a business, and then feeling through the next steps there, right? And masculine leadership, David has a different way of describing it that I don't necessarily, it's not that I just, it doesn't resonate with me as much, but I'll mention it here, that, masculine leadership, he'll describe as much more calculating, putting yourself, so the masculine in us, in all of us, leads by I guess I do do this, but leads by putting ourselves into the future moment and calculating a path to the future moment that's desired. Okay. And there's a more or less, it's not necessarily linear, but there's a path to get there. I want to get from Mount Shasta back to Los Angeles. I'm going to calculate that, whatever that is. That's me in my masculine, putting myself into a future space and time. And it's usually single-minded. It's a single-minded direction. It's not consensus building. Whereas David's always, he's like, he gives me shit about this. It's like, well, actually, you, John, are much more of a feminine leader, right? Because you are in team building and you like consensus and you like feel your way through the, what to do versus thinking about it, calculating, right? And moving forward. The way that I would describe feminine leadership is, that there is much more of a consensus building. And I think in my team, in my organization, we do that a lot. Like, we're constantly team building and we're constantly, how does this feel? Let's do this. How does this feel? Versus me just going, okay, here's what we're doing for this workshop. It's going to be A, B, C, and D. Nothing wrong with that. I just prefer to do, I prefer the consensus building. Now, I'll say, before I get into the feminine leadership piece, I don't actually think that leadership should be feminine or masculine. I think ultimately it needs to be completely integrated. However, there are moments where feeling consciousness and deciding the next step is preferable to feeling, to being with the feeling of your heart and then moving, because emotion may dictate one movement, consciousness may dictate another. Ultimately, we want to be able to be tethered both to the root of our heart, like the deepest part of our heart, and consciousness itself, and constantly be calibrating from there as we move forward into the world. So, but if we were going to just say, hey, the moments where feminine leadership are called for are the moments like, what does love want to do next? What would if I dropped into the sensation of the deepest part of my heart, what would that be? Now, there may be crossover here between consciousness and heart-centered, sort of, let's call it sensation or feeling, versus the release and relaxing into consciousness and waiting for something to emerge, right? And so in general, I think that each human being who wants to lead should cultivate both capacities, the capacity to release and just be in consciousness, but also to feel completely. And then there's that beautiful sort of calibration between tethering to the infinite and feeling everything that's happening in this moment. And then kind of moving in and out through that. Now, this is just as true. The only I mean, there's all these spectrums, right? I mean, a lot of the women on this call, part of your capacity as a lover, right, let's say, or a businesswoman, right, will be to feel. You may use 80% of your feminine and 20% of awareness. Some or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. It's not really gender specific, but in a moment of masculine leadership, what's driving us is consciousness. In a moment of feminine leadership, I would say what's driving us is love. And ultimately, we want to have that, completely integrated into our body, mind, and be making decisions from there. I mean, it's very specific to each moment's going to call for a different capacity or a different blend, right? Or a different approach.